Now back on dry land after Lake Tahoe and the experience of the two outdoor games. This is In Goal Radio, the podcast, with a solid footing around the National Hockey League, and we're seeing some great goaltending performances across the board. Also, congratulations, the Western Hockey League looks like it's going to be up and running in a couple of weeks, so that is some great news there. Still some questions whether the Ontario Hockey League will get going, but a little bit of progress as we work our way towards the month of March. And I am Darren Millard, joined by the co-founders of In Goal Magazine, as usual, David Hutchison and Kevin Woodley. And guys, we saw a great week by the old guys, wasn't it? Like between Marc-Andre Fleury and Henrik Lundqvist. How about the return? Let's start there with Henrik Lundqvist back on the ice. I wasn't sure we'd ever see this again, and it's given me a little bit of boost of optimism that Henrik Lundqvist might try and play again, Woody.
Like, the whole goalie union smiled when he released that video. Like we're not supposed to fanboy, but I will fanboy over Henrik Lundqvist. Like, he's been really good to us, but just such a treat to watch. So, and you can, the passion he has for this position and playing it just exudes from him. So seeing him back on the ice, like, I just felt like a kid. It was warm fuzzies all around. It was just really good to see. And whether we get to see it in the NHL or not, it looks like things are going to be okay for him. I mean, hockey, I hope he gets back because his passion is missed. And I want to see him playing again, but just the fact he's able to get on the ice, what a great start. And I pretty much made my, day, week, month, just seeing him skating again. It was awesome.
The miracle of modern medical science. Open heart surgery to back on the ice. And he wasn't gingerly skating around there. That looked like a mid-season practice to me, guys. It sure sounded like it was going to be a minimum year when we heard he was having open heart surgery. And here, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see him back on the ice playing before the end of the season the way that workout looked. I mean, it's just super exciting to see what's going on now.
47 days between the surgery and being back on the ice. It's incredible. Now, think back. How many times have you guys worked out? What have you done in 47 days that could potentially compare to what Henrik Lundqvist has done? Nothing.
I don't know. If I do 5 push-ups.
I've gone through 47 day stretches where I've probably gained enough weight to go the other direction.
And that's just such a compliment.
Remarkable.
And then you've got Marc-Andre Fleury doing what he's doing, taking the ball from Robin Lehner, who's out with the injury, and just ripping up the National Hockey League. A couple of shutouts in that high-profile series against the Colorado Avalanche. He's changed his game. He's more conservative inside the crease, and we're seeing some severe performance backup from the analytics part of it. To the eye test, Woody.
Oh, absolutely. Not that I jinxed Andre Vasilevsky when I handed him the Vezina here a couple of weeks ago, like Hutch thinks I did, because Andre is still number 2 in the league, but number 1 with a bullet. When I take a look at Clearsight Analytics website right now in terms of goal differential, which is kind of how many goals has he saved relative to expected, when you look at shot quality and defensive environment, like weighing that with 34 points of data per shot, like no other company does. Marc-Andre Fleury, number 1 with a bullet, almost 14 goals saved on just 250 chances. Like Vasilevsky's number 2 at 9, and he's had 100 more chances. Like that is a remarkable run, and it's certainly given him a head start on the Vezina. We'll see where he ends up in terms of games played when Lehner gets back. But like, what a great story. Interesting, like guys, looking at this list, I mentioned Vasilevsky too. Jordan Binnington, number 3, another guy who a lot of the times we've had articles on this at In Goal Premium using these analytics. Jordan Binnington last year, if you looked at his raw numbers, people were like, oh, like second year slump, not, I guess technically sophomore slump after winning the cup, because the narrative was they were so good defensively and his raw numbers should be better. But when you adjusted them, the narrative that was wrong there is that they were great defensively. They weren't, and he was holding them up, and he's doing it again this year. He's 3rd. Cal Peterson, friend of the show, previous guest, and a guy that I had tagged for a breakout this year, despite having sort of Jonathan Quick as a ceiling above him in terms of games played. He's 4th. And our guest today, Laurent Brossoit, almost 7 goals saved on just 121 chances with the Winnipeg Jets already. That's a remarkable start for LB, and we'll have a chance to talk to him about, sort of where he's at with the foundation of his game and how it's allowing to him to have success later on in this episode.
Hutch, how long into the season before you have to really put Marc-Andre Fleury as a series contender for a Vezina Trophy?
Well, I sent you a note a week and a half or two ago saying I thought he was a contender, so pretty early into the season. And my rationale there was that, we've had years where it's felt like a bit of a career honor as much as a current year honor, where the GMs love to reward somebody for long time success. And if anybody's due for that, it's Marc-Andre Fleury, obviously backed up with this year's performances as well. And that's why I felt, even though he hadn't played a ton of games at that point and sharing the load with Robin Lehner didn't look like he was going to be able to get in the number of games that you might traditionally expect, I still thought that there was a chance that the GMs might lean that way when the time comes. So I'm hoping that's still the case. Woody, I'm curious, as you're talking about the advanced stats there, is there any way to translate that number of goals saved to points in the standings, to wins? Does anybody ever try and see what that might mean to a team?
Top of my head, there is like X number of goals saved, translates to wins. I want to say it's something like 4, like every 4 is like just a goaltender win. But really the other stat, and I don't have it in front of me right now, is sort of stolen wins. Like when you exceed expectations by more than a goal in a single game, it's classified as a stolen win. And we used to talk about how Jacob Markstrom led that category last year, as well as being second only to Hellebuck in goals saved, and how he should have been a part of the Vezina conversation. So I'll have to have a look at that one for next week on Marc-Andre Fleury. Don't have it up in front of me right now, but certainly, watching like a couple of those, Darren, like it's not just that he gets a shutout, it's a 1-0 shutout. So, clearly playing a big role in the win results as well. Forget the Vezina, because listen, outside of games played 2 years ago, he should have been in this conversation as well. Like since he's got to Vegas, outside of last year, he's been in that conversation. Just games played have prevented him from being a finalist. With a run like that over this time frame, what are we talking about in terms of the Olympics and Team Canada? And I think that gets overlooked. And, it's easy to look at this as a blip. But again, since he arrived in Vegas over 4 years, and you mentioned some of the changes this year, Darren, I thought last year he started to color outside the lines a little bit and play a little bit aggressively and get caught with that sometimes. Now that he's back playing more contained and yet still unpredictable on his posts, we've seen some, he's not doing the same thing every time. Like, really as the game changes, Flowers changing with it. And, I don't think that's, it's early, yes, but I think that's a fair conversation to have. I think he's in that conversation. If you were picking a team right now, in all fairness, he should be. He absolutely should be in that conversation.
It's early, but really, when you take into account a 56-game schedule, you're approaching where you'd be sort of halfway through an 82-game campaign. So we'll keep an eye on it. This is In Goal Radio, the podcast presented by The Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, source for sports Surrey, where they keep you up to date even through a year-long pandemic. Woody.
Well, speaking of evolutions, we are on the eve of the new stuff. Like by this time next week, when we have the next episode of the podcast, you will have some early looks at the latest from CCM, the eFlex 5 line. And there's no better place to go to find your early looks than thehockeyshop.com. And the Hockey Shop source for sports in Surrey, when it's time to sort of actually get hands-on and feel and touch and see how this product is going to fit your game, they'll have all the latest and greatest in stock. And in the meantime, don't hesitate to go there and save a little money on last year's items. If there's some things you've been looking at where you don't expect big changes, pants, chest protectors, pants, chest protectors, pants. Yeah, good job, Kev. Pants, chest protectors, and say sticks, or like we're going to talk about today, jocks, always important. You can save 20% off on a lot of the merchandise. If it's not on sale, use the InGoal20 promo code to get yourself 20% off anyway. So make sure you check them out, The Hockey Shop and thehockeyshop.com. There's a reason it's where we shop for our goalie stuff, and it's where you should too.
The new stuff is coming up, and we have a new set for Laurent Brossoit, a brand new look for him, going with the dark pads and the gloves, and it's rock star stuff really pops out at you. And we'll chat with Laurent Brossoit in just a little bit in our feature interview brought to you by Sense Arena VR. Sense Arena bring you the feature interview every week on In Goal Radio, the podcast. Hey, are we seeing a tandem in Florida right now where we didn't really expect one a couple of years ago?
Chris Driedger's kind of forced his way into that conversation, eh? I mean, just rocking along with, like, I think last I checked, like a 930, playing really well. There's a juxtaposition there for sure when you look at him at, on an $850,000 a year contract, and, everybody's going to talk about Bob on a $10 million contract with lesser numbers, but at the end of the day, Bob's gotten some wins too. So certainly, Chris has earned that time. He's showing that last year's 938 in a small sample size wasn't a fluke. Interestingly enough, like, I'd highly recommend, folks, we had him on the pod during the break between the bubble, and I went back and listened to it, and it is an hour of goalie goodness. And when you listen to it, you will know why Chris Driedger is doing what he's doing right now, not just in terms of the career path, but the adjustments he's made on the ice, and maybe even more so off the ice in terms of his mentality and work ethic and things like that. Things that he recognized early in his career maybe weren't, you always think you're working hard, but, there was a moment there where he realized it wasn't as hard as he could. So good on him. And I'd highly recommend sort of going back into the archives and digging that up if you haven't already, because it was a great listen to get to spend that much time with him earlier in the summer. And now that we see him having this success again, a worthwhile revisit as well.
Hutch, I don't do that enough. Go back and listen to previous episodes. That's a great reminder, Woody.
And I think we need to start sharing some of them over at Premium just to remind people of all the great stuff that's there. 107, 108 episodes today of incredible content. And definitely encourage people to go back. Chris Driedger's a UFA after this year, guys.
Oh, yeah. He's handed himself a nice ticket. And I should say, #nice, it was episode 69 for Chris Driedger.
I was going to ask Hutch because he's our go-to guy for all that stuff. And I thought that's not fair to just put him on the spot and throw him. For once, I bit my tongue. I know. Usually I jump at those opportunities. But so episode 69 with Chris Driedger, the feature interview coming up in just a little bit. We also have a conversation with Adam Francilia from the San Jose Sharks and our gear segment discussing Jocks and Jills. But Ken Dryden penned a very long, extensive, detailed essay a couple of weeks ago. It has received plenty of publicity, and we have not a response, but certainly paying some attention to it from the in-goal standpoint, Hutch.
Yeah, and Paul Campbell, who's been working with us for many years now, has written some of the most insightful stuff we have over at In Goal. He is an incredibly well-thought and well-spoken individual, and he dives into the details of the game like no other, except Woody, of course. And his ability to share his thoughts is well received by everybody. So when he had a series of tweets in response to Dryden's article, we just reached out and said, "Hey, Paul, how about we expand on this a little bit and share all your thoughts with our members?" So he did that, and we published it this week. Reading the article, I was really excited when I saw it because as you know, Dryden's sort of my hero growing up. He's the guy that made me want to be a goaltender. And he is so well thought himself and so well spoken. I love his writing, but it just sort of seemed like the article was, I think as Woody put it, about 5 years behind the times. He had the game right at the time, but so much has changed. And for me, that comment that a goaltender could really spend the entire game on his knees and only got up because of appearances was, a little bit. Well, it was just flat out wrong because we see the game has become an East-West game. We see the game has become where mobility and skating skill is so important for goaltenders now. And there's just no way you could live on your knees. And all his comments about equipment.
You're taking him very, very literally. And I don't think he ever
But you know
that.
what? I don't think he did, except that he kept playing on it. If he just said it once and threw it away, maybe. But and of course, maybe not completely literally, but he kept coming back to it. Now more than ever, that mobility is more and more important. So it just was out of touch, I thought. Certainly there was a time that you could be a big blocking goaltender and thrive on that, even though, of course, you got to your feet from time to time. But more than ever, that mobility is just vital in the game today. And I think he just missed the mark. And that was really unfortunate because here's a guy who's so well respected in the game and people listen to him. And so if he doesn't see what's going on now, that I don't think that bodes well for all of us. And I feel badly about that.
We should be careful not to gang up on somebody or people who criticize the position or the way it's played. Like there's an ounce of truth and something that we can take from everything.
Absolutely. And listen, I'm kind of with Hutch on this one, and I cringe to do it because like hero status, and also a guy who like there's been some personal interactions that show like he's as good a person as he is a thinker, right? So you don't want to be critical, but at the same time, some of the points when you really broke them down, it was hard not to. And one of them was just the concept of bigger goaltenders, and with broad strokes, it's right, but we've dug into this. Like that bridge has been crossed. Goalies are actually getting smaller since 2013. The overall, like, yes, you've got your monsters, but success in the NHL isn't just height anymore. Like we're seeing that sweet spot at 6'2", not 6'5". And yeah, we keep seeing 6'5" goaltenders. You see more of them because they get the benefit of the doubt and more opportunities because that narrative exists. And frankly, there are NHL teams that are behind on it because they're still drafting the 6'5", 6'6", and the guys having success are around 6'1", 6'2", because of the need to be mobile. And because of all the things he talks about with, like this, just the game is about everybody collapsing in the net and throwing junk there and creating scrambles and broken plays. And there's still an element of that he's correct about. But where we've seen offense change and why we've seen offense improve even slightly is because of lateral plays. Because the Penguins won back-to-back cups creating lateral offense and preventing it at the other end. Because the Washington Capitals directly looked at the numbers and created an attack that mimicked that and won a cup. Like, we are seeing dynamic offense that mandates goalies be able to move and skate. How many conversations have we had around the league with, not just with the goalies, but with the coaches in the past year about if you can't skate in this game, you can't play it. Now, some guys move as well on their knees as they do on their skates, sort of, almost, and they do spend more time there. And maybe some of the reverse VH stuff, how many times have we said, man, like no need to be down in that early? But at the end of the day, if you can't move, if you can't skate, you can't play in the game today, and that's a problem. I will give him some benefit of the doubt. He was wrong on the equipment rule changes in a couple of spots in terms of, he said we should have leg pads that are mandated to match the height of the goaltender. And obviously we know in the goalie world that the NHL's already done that. But where he was correct and where I could excuse him maybe missing the fact they'd done that is sometimes it's freaking hard to tell. It's hard to tell that we've got a rule tying goalie leg length to pad height because goalies have found a way to shift the pads up their legs. And his idea of mandating a maximum thigh rise, even if you made it proportional, so that the top of the pad from the knee up, like, was mandated to only go so high, whereas guys have found ways to have their total height shifted up their legs so it looks higher. Hey, I'm all for that. And that's a really good point. It's actually something that I brought up back when they made the rule changes. Like, you might need to do this. So you don't want to be so defensive as a goalie union that you just throw out all complaints and don't critically think about it. But I think what I loved about what Paul did is he went through each point in his counter argument and did critically think about it and responded, including the allowance that, hey, in terms of pad height, you might be right. The other thing I'll throw out there, I saw this from Rob Gerson on his hashtag, or his Twitter handle is @goalie_school, a goalie coach that interacts with Paul and with us on Twitter sometimes. He actually has a friend that was one of the testers when they did the taller nets. And the guy just absolutely got rocked in the mask the whole time through because he was taking them off the bean the whole way. Dryden's right about equipment, the mask, the chest protector, allowing for goalies to go down. But at a time when we're worried about safety, I'm not sure we want to encourage more buzzing of the tower and shots off the mask. I happened to watch Connor Hellebuck get blown up here with an Elias Pettersson one-timer just this week, and I couldn't frankly believe he walked away from it. Like, the shots guys are taking as is are crazy. Allow shooters to shoot another couple of inches higher and score, and we might get somebody killed. Although people will say I'm being little hyperbole there, but not far off.
Not far off, and I actually agree 100% on that point. And I love seeing it this morning when Rob made it on Twitter. I've said this for years about kids and a reason to have kids in smaller nets, and there's a lot of them in my opinion, and I know some people disagree. When you're 10 years old, your head's at the crossbar and you're getting rocked all the time. And so I can see that would happen at the National Hockey League level as well. One thing I really did like about Dryden's article, though, guys, was that concept of unintended consequences when you change things. And so the fact that things had changed in the game that merited a response in the offensive attack, whether we agree with him or not, I thought was really interesting. For me, though, you have to ask that question. What's the most exciting play? And I think we want to encourage that. And the exciting play is not Guy Lafleur skating down the wing and taking a shot from the top of the circle that beats the helpless goaltender. I think the exciting play is the tic-tac-toe east-west play that we're seeing now that just sort of leaves your jaw dropping open. And so what can we do in the game to encourage that? And for me, that's give players some time and space to operate.
Yeah, that's key. Scoring, to me, like, goals are great, but so are scoring chances, because great saves can be just as entertaining. And so if we force goalies to make great saves, we have to give them credit for being able to as well. And in speaking of unintended consequences, when the NHL reined in equipment size and pad size from 12 to 11 inches, not the 10 inches that he states in the article, and reined in pad height and reined in, what did we hear? Like, goalies got faster. They all talked about it. Equipment got smaller and they got faster. So when you talk about unintended consequences, I think you have to be careful, because they might not be what you were expecting if you change the game. And making the net bigger and assuming that's going to reduce the amount of sort of traffic that clogs the front of the net is an assumption that I'm not sure. I'm not saying I disagree with it, but I think it's a risky assumption to make, because anytime we've seen, like, take the coaches out of the game and you'll have all the offense you want. Just watch an all-star game. Take the structure and the defensive structure out. Hey, look at the Islanders when Doug Weight was coach. No shortage of offense both ways there. So I think that if you make the nets bigger, hell, you could have coaches that would be like, God damn, we can't give up these goals. We need more collapsing. We need taller defensemen to get in front of the net more now. So, just assuming it will change because of bigger nets, I'm not sure is necessarily correct. And I'm not foreseeing more bad goals. I want to see more good offense.
I have been a proponent to limit the number of coaches on the bench for a long time to 2. I'll give you 2 coaches on the bench, but that's it. And you can still have the same number of assistant coaches, and all my buddies who are coaches are going to be all over me here. You can still have all those coaches upstairs, and they can talk to the players during the intermission and practice and prep, but you only have 2 coaches on the bench. It should lead to more offense. One thing I do want to do, I want us to start a YouTube channel and have this podcast on video. Just not to see our beautiful smiling faces, but just to see Hutch respond to when Woody's talking. And it's either he's in agreement or he's like moving his head back and forth with a scrunched up face. And those two images, the people deserve to see that.
Yeah, but we don't want them to see when he dozes off because I haven't stopped talking for half an hour.
Well, and I was going to say, first off, Darren, we have a YouTube channel.
Okay, well,
just so
no, sorry. This podcast, like I want to see this podcast up on video.
Fair enough.
I misphrased that.
I'll just be like the lawyer that turned his face into a cat so that people don't have to see who the real me is. I probably would do that. That's why I like to be behind the camera. No, I'm not disagreeing or agreeing with Woody. I'm just I'm a little slow processor and I've got a horrible memory. So Woody says something. I'm like, okay, now I know what I can add in that's got some value. Then he goes to point 2. Then he goes to point 3. I've now forgotten what I was going to say about point 1. I'm trying to think up what I can say on point 3. Now he's on point 6.
It's
eventually I'm lost.
Listen, I am like a human mental acuity test. This is like brain training, just trying to keep up with my random crap.
Good point.
I watch Hutch and his reactions.
It's not crap and it's not random. It's solid, Woody.
I see Hutch and his reactions, and I'm reminded that there's no way when you come to visit Las Vegas, I'm letting you anywhere near a poker table, because you'd be like tells all over the place.
Yeah, 100%.
Where do we find the article by Paul Campbell?
InGoalMag.com. Yeah.
Yep, it's right up on the front, and we encourage people to check it out. There's lots of great stuff there this week, as always. More excerpts from Justin Goldman, his book, The Power Within, Power Within 2, and Mike Valley as well, his co-author with Nora Ratty. And we've got a great new pro read with Eric Comrie, who's not done pro reads with us before. Woody?
We also have coming a nice little drill with Laurent Brossoit that is going to tie directly into a save that he made and our conversation here on the In Goal Radio podcast, which is coming up here a little later on. We're going to turn that into a pro drills because it was just a fascinating watching him make a save, then watching a drill that was the exact same situation, and then finding out in our conversation that that's something they had been working on since giving up a similar goal early in the season. So like, it's one of those great moments where you're like, wow, like you see this work with the goalie coaches and Wade Flaherty in Winnipeg, and then you see a save made, and it was a hell of a save. And then you talk to the goalie about the drill they do the next day that seems to me it's imitating. He's like, yeah, we've been working on it, and I don't make that save if not for that drill. And you see it all to come together like that. I'm putting together a piece that shows the drill, shows the save, adds their comments. It'll be up by the end of this week and tie all those things together so other goalies can see the drill and work on these same things, but also just see a real glimpse into how, goalie coaching works. Like, they're not just out there running random drills. They're working on things that are very specific to these guys' games. And to see it pay off with a save, like a 5 Bell power play save in a game they won, 2-0, but was essentially a 1-0 game until an empty netter. It was pretty cool.
You can listen to that section of the interview when we bring you the feature conversation on In Goal Radio, the podcast with Laurent Brossoit, brought to you by Sensorina VR in just a little bit. And I can't wait to see that trade tree that you're going to put together, or that goalie tree that you're going to put together regarding the thought process and everything that goes into the drill and then the save from Laurent Brossoit. But right now, let's head over to the Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, source for sports Surrey. Some conversation about one of the most important pieces of equipment, jocks and jills, as we send you over to Kevin Woodley and Cam Matwa.
Welcome back to the Hockey Shop, source for sports. We're back down in goalie utopia as we are every week with Cam Matwiv playing a little dress up, this time below the waist. This is like trying on a swimsuit as we get into jocks. This year's the latest, the greatest, how to keep everything that's important to you protected. Cam, we got 6 models here, including a Jill. Let's just walk through it real quick. When I first come into the store and say, Cam Matwiv, I need a can, what are you asking? Is this a try it on thing? Are there different specs, different fits? Does pant integration matter? Walk me through the keys.
It's some things that often get glossed over there. You did touch on, which is actually quite important. A jock just isn't a jock. This is one you want to kind of pay attention to and invest some time in, and also some money, because it is worth it. Think from my own personal experience. So yes, there are some questions, whether or not you do tuck in your chest protector or not, what size pants you're wearing, what level of protection you're looking for. Are you looking for a single cup? Are you looking for a double cup?
A lot of guys in the NHL wear 3 cups. So they will wear what we would call a double cup, which is kind of like 2 cups in the goalie jock, but they will also put a traditional athletic cup, like in a tight jock strap, like you're, as a kid, you're wearing a jock strap. They'll put one of those underneath and actually have 3 layers of protection.
Correct.
Does that matter? Like, do you have to consider whether you're wearing a cup underneath? Does that affect how these will fit?
Yes, it does. And my own personal experience, that's something I do myself. Just even finding, and even some days, like, even that's not enough. Like, more is better, in my opinion, on this one. Again, personal preference does fall into line. Some things can feel a little bit bulkier than others, so it is worth it to get a little bit of feel. That said, based off of kind of what you had in the past, again, what your specific needs are and how much you're power playing, that does kind of negate, where you should line up in terms of which one you should pick. That said, what I have on myself,
We'll start
Brian's Optic, double cup protection. This one will be one of the thicker, bigger ones that we do carry. This, along with the Von Ventus SLR that we have, will be one of the bigger options that we do have. Very protective. Both are double cup. Feature on the Von a little bit higher up in terms of how much it covers at the gut. I'd say, especially for someone that doesn't tuck in their chest protector, that needs a little bit more of that overlap protection, something they can look into, whereas this Optic one is a bit lower cut in particular. which will help to, have that chest still integrate with the pants without interfering at all.
Both of them double cup.
That's correct.
Extra layers of protection are always a good thing.
That's not our only double cup. We have one more true double cup, the CCM Pro Jock. Something, again, that's a little bit lower profile. Great for that chest integration and not having any double up in terms of that coverage. Again, very protective. A little bit lower profile on the sides too, so it's not expanding out too much. All of these are adjustable. Most of the Velcro is hidden in the front with that waistband that can be tightened or loosened. Senior is one size. However, all the jocks do have, we do have youth, we do have junior, intermediate, and senior sizes. Within that, there's no subcategories to the sizing, so senior is one size fits all. Another example, not quite a double cup, but gets kind of considered as, this Bauer Supreme jock, always been a very great option. Single cup, but that layer that comes in front has their pour-on foam material. It features...
And if there's ever an area you want to have impact-absorbing specialty foams in, this is it.
That's definitely one you want to have, that's for sure. Lots of extra wraparound protection. Great overall fit. They use their good material too, so it tends to stay less smelly.
So let's go with technically why this isn't a double cup. Like, it's got a second layer of protection, and it's a fairly rigid, hard layer.
Yes.
But just because that isn't technically like an actual
that doesn't
plastic...
have a physical jock in it, so it is not a double cup.
Okay, so that brings us to the one that I am wearing, the Warrior. And you may be asking yourself, why is Kevin so small? We've tried our best to stay away from, like, Cam, you talked about bulk. I didn't laugh. I kept a straight face as you were using words like that, and you just couldn't keep it together, eh? Like, just mind like a child. Anyways, we'll let him gather his thoughts while I talk about this Warrior RX2, as you can see, intermediate. The reason it looks a little small on me is because Cam has completely sold out of the senior line. And I gotta say, one of the ones that you sold out was me purchasing one. I had a Warrior Cup for years. When eventually the elastic wore out on the waistband, I replaced it with this new Warrior model. Now again, has this extra layer on top of a cup underneath, but isn't technically considered a double cup.
This one flirts the line a little bit more than even the Bauer Supreme there. We'll call it their deflector plate, which really does do as advertised. That impact comes in, that plate shifts a little bit, so it's really helping to kind of deflect that impact away from your sensitive areas. This has been a really great seller for us. The Warrior did really nail this really well with their jock. It's in quite a few NHL pro rooms.
Yeah, I know the one I used to have, the original model of this. It didn't need to change for years. It stayed the same. Ryan Miller here in Vancouver was a guy that wore that one religiously.
Good example of one, and a guy that's very in tune with his gear and knows protection. So there you go, Ryan Miller approved.
Thank God you didn't hit me. Okay, last one. Jills, how many different models do you have? You brought out the Vapor here. How many different options do we got
I
there?
believe we got 3 different options that I carry. I have a CCM one, I have a Vaughn one, and then this Bauer Vapor, junior and senior sizes. Again, hey, girls got to get protected too as well with their pelvic protectors. Here's a good goalie example with this Bauer one's been a good staple for us. We always kind of chug through these pretty easily. Not much really else to say about that one.
But just beyond what a player would wear, much like
correct.
Like
there's much more padding density to this, and the plate itself that is in there is quite a bit thicker than what you would find upstairs.
Upstairs being the players section. All right. Okay. So I just wore a extra small jock on purpose, and we managed to make it almost through the entire segment without you acting like Beavis and Butthead skit. Most of our audience is probably too young to know what Beavis and Butthead is, which is dating us anyways. Let's just call it quits there. We survived. Cam, if they got any more questions about which model is going to fit them, about what, like you said, sizes, junior, senior, true double cup, not a true double cup, where can they get a hold of you other than checking them out at thehockeyshop.com? Where can they get you in person?
604-589-8299.
And if they're calling from international, maybe down on the other side of the border, because a lot of these products will ship.
1-800-567-7790.
Perfect.
Yeah, Beavis and Butthead. You guys, they are two of my heroes. I know that's not shooting very high, but those guys make me laugh. I saw them on a promo the other day, and I just started giggling.
So you know that we hear a lot from parents that listen to this podcast driving with their young goalies to the rink, and like the parents are all laughing, and all the kids are like, "What is that? What the hell are you talking about, Dad? What are you giggling about? What's a Beavis? I know what a butthead, but what's a Beavis?" So yeah, we had a little fun there, and Cam was actually just quite grateful that for those that follow along and watch our video segments, I'll save you looking for the comedy moment there. Sadly, I did not take the opportunity to do any cup checks on Cam during that segment. No future Cams were hurt in the filming of this segment.
that Warrior jock, it is a tank.
Yeah, it's what I wear. And it's what I've worn for a while, and I really like it. It's interesting that it's not technically classified as a double cup, but to me, it's got all the protection you need. And I'm not alone. I know Ryan Miller here when he was here in Vancouver. That's a model that he wore and still wears in Anaheim. So yeah, it's one of the ones I like. But it was interesting to walk through them. You don't think about it. You find one you like and you stick with it. But there were actually a couple other options that I think, in terms of fitting with the pants and having a little more padding up around the belly, depending on how you wear your pants. Like I actually was thinking as I looked through them, like there are different features and different fits and different. And there was a couple, a couple that I was like, yeah, you know what? Like, when I'm wearing the pants a little loose, because let's be honest, I had a few too many Christmas dinners and they're still sticking around. It'd be nice to have a little protection there down below the chest protector and sort of that lower abdominal area.
The end of February.
Yeah, I mean, like, what can I say? I'm still blaming Christmas. Got to blame something for all this extra weight.
I need to cut that part off mine just so it'll fit with my belly there. It just folds right over in two anyway. So I have to create a little petition here on behalf of all women named Jill to change the name of the female protector, because my wife is Jill. And when she took up goaltending shortly after we met, the name of that protective piece was, she wasn't too excited about that.
I'll sign that petition for her.
Okay. We got to come up with a new name. Anybody who's smarter than we are, let us know.
Jill's my favorite Hutch. I think she's Woody's favorite Hutch. No offense to Matt.
Unless you name
he could be second and I can come in just behind Doug. It's fine.
Unless you have another kid and name him Jock.
Our Sense Arena VR feature interview of the week is Laurent Brossoit of the Edmonton Oilers, off to a nice start. 3 wins in his first 4 decisions. Remember, it's you look back, he broke in with the Oilers after like a stellar junior career with the Edmonton Oil Kings. He came up through that system in that environment, but he's really enjoyed his greatest success when he went over to Winnipeg and established himself as a full-time National Hockey Leaguer. Woody.
Yeah, he's having a hell of a run, and it's really fun, and you'll hear him talk about this. I will say this: the upside of this schedule, as much as this is not ideal for anyone, but we're seeing teams like, for example, here in Vancouver come in for, the Jets were here for 2 games and almost 4 days, 3 practices. And so you get to watch them day in and day out. And that doesn't happen when teams are coming through town, like one stop and gone. So you get to watch them practice and spend a few days here. And the interplay between Brossoit and Hellebuck and Wade Flaherty, the conversations on the ice, and we talk about that with Adam Francilia later in our second feature interview. And then you hear Brossoit talk about sort of the evolution of his game, the understanding of, and how much he loves that, that back and forth where they're kind of comparing notes and the similarities between their games, which I asked Paul Maurice about after Brossoit's shutout win here in Vancouver, and how easier that is for a team to play in front of guys who play similarly. Like one guy's not chasing the play all over the place outside of the crease and the other guy's playing deep. Like there's a structure to their games that, as Maurice said, like it's not just the saves they make, but the way pucks come off them, where they leave rebounds. Like there are some similarities in style that tie into foundation similarities in their approach that actually benefit the Winnipeg Jets because of how it plays out on the ice. So just a fascinating few days with the Jets, with Brossoit, and very kind of him to give us 15 minutes to sort of catch up on all those elements before he left town.
And Hutch, the feature interview brought to us by Sense Arena VR.
And I don't know if Laurent Brossoit has tried Sensorina yet, but there's a guy, as you listen to this interview, who the details in his game and working on those subtleties are so important to him. And I really respect everything he was saying there. And our folks at Sensorina will really help you tidy up your game because it is such a realistic simulation of what we're experiencing on the ice. And if you want to know what that's like, we really strongly encourage you, go to ingoalmag.com, check out the webinar that we did with them just over a week ago, and you will get a feel for what it's like to use Sensorina, because fairly early on, we run a little video where we show you what's exactly going on in the headset as you first walk onto the virtual ice, as you take some shots in a warm-up drill, as you face a video shooter versus the simulated shooters they have in the game, the two different options. We show you some of the cognitive drills that are available inside Sensorina. You can get a real feel through this webinar and through listening to Eric Comrie talk about his experiences as an NHL goaltender using Sensorina. You can get a real feel for what it's like. And I know it's a big commitment to get involved with Sensorina and start using it in your training. So you want to use this as a great opportunity to really evaluate what it's capable of for you in your game. And, our experience has been nothing but positive. Working with Sensorina translates to what you're doing on the ice. And Eric Comrie said the very same thing, use it in the morning and your tracking is on in the afternoon on the ice. For me, that's enough said.
It's another tool that you can put into your game, just like having a goaltending coach examine the game, see a save selection, see a goal that beat you, and then you make the adjustments.
Well, and Hutch did such a good job on the video of those presentations, and hearing Eric sort of watch those videos and share his thoughts on it. I've had 3 pros NHL contracted goaltenders reach out since we launched it to ask for more information about starting to use it themselves. So I think that's a credit to the presentation, Hutch, because we've talked about it a lot, but I'd really recommend going and watching the webinar itself, because it as much as you can never on a screen be brought into the environment, you're always watching it versus really feeling like you're inside of it. And Comrie talked about that well. It's as close as I've seen to sort of experiencing that. And clearly it's resonated, not just with other people that have bought in, but like NHLers and other pros who are like, I am interested in this. So credit to you, and a high recommendation that everybody else goes and checks it out.
Well done, Hutch. And you can't be at the rink all the time. You can't be on the ice 24/7. This helps you gain some skills and maintain some skills when you're not inside that arena. Laurent Brossoit is our feature interview, brought to you by Sensorina VR, the Winnipeg Jet goaltender, chatting with Kevin Woodley.
So I'm just curious, what has been the toughest part of this season for you, coming back after such a long break? And obviously you guys were in the bubble, but not necessarily playing games. That's a long time between games, LB. How'd you get prepared for it? How'd you focus for it? And how has been the adjustment getting back up to speed?
Well, I've had my fair share of experience now in the NHL with having to deal with long stretches of time without playing. So I've gotten, to know the ins and outs of how to do that. And I think so far for me, it's just been having a super foundational routine and sticking to it. And I think I've created one that I'm really happy with this year.
Now, and obviously, like, going games between starts is one thing, but going sort of 10 months is a whole nother thing. What was the focus in that sort of prolonged off season towards sort of not rebuilding, but sort of reestablishing or making sure that foundation, and if you can share any details of what it is for you, making sure it's intact and keeping it intact through such a long stretch between, NHL season?
A long stretch like that, it depends how you look at it. I mean, you can look at it like a long stretch, and you can get cold, for me, it was a really good opportunity to go back to the basics and really take my time to get the body as healthy as possible. I mean, a season is pretty grueling. It's a high impact, especially goaltending. It's high impact on your joints and whatnot. So there's a lot of wear and tear through a season, whether you're playing or not. Even in practices, it's pretty demanding. So having that extra time was really nice to get the body to feel good. I would say last season, and it didn't feel as good as it has in the past. So it was a good big chunk of time that allowed me to get the body feeling good.
And that's just obviously we know work with Adam Francilia. Is there anything you did different or just went right back to work with him? And did you have to do a lot of it over things like Zoom calls, or are you so dialed in with his program that you sort of know it and you don't need a lot of one-on-one time, whether it's in person in Kelowna or over a Zoom?
Yeah, I'm lucky enough now to have been working with him for long enough where it's pretty efficient. Our communication line is pretty efficient. I'll have a pretty good idea of what I want based on my experience with the stuff that he gives me, and I pick and choose the stuff that's been working for me, and he'll add things here and take things out, and I'll add things here, and we have kind of a good discussion on what's best for me, and now it's just kind of maintenance now. There's just a lot of it took a while for us to figure out what needs, what are the sort of things that are required for me to be at my best, and it's nice to have been working with him for long enough that we kind of know that, and it's easy now.
Now, are there any elements you can pull out of that? I remember when I texted him this summer, I was working on a story. We had a goalie that was talking about doing bar ballet as part of his dorsiflexion and improving some of his range of movement through his ankles. And I talked to Adam about Aldoa, and I was curious which one of his students had sort of gotten more into it, and he mentioned you. Like, is Aldoa and Aldoa type movements for you? Is that part of it? Not that it's a focus, but there's so many different things that you've been introduced to over the years. I'm just curious which ones you gravitate towards and why.
Well, that's the beautiful thing about kind of technology and all the information that's out there nowadays. There's a lot of innovative, exercise-based, whether it's for medical reasons or for just performance-based reasons. There's so much out there that we have at our disposal. And over the last 5 or 6 years, I've been introduced to a lot of it, like you said, and Aldoa is definitely one of them. I work Aldoa in pretty consistently, and it's just a tool. Like there's a lot of myofascial stretches that I do, and I just pick and choose the ones that are, kind of help me recover the most based on the muscle complexes that I use the most, and the ones that need recovering the most. And then I'll mix in some Aldoas and then I'll mix in, some Feldenkrais, and I'll mix in your regular typical workout. So, all the things that I work into my routine now, if someone were to do it all, at once, it would be pretty overwhelming. And it was for me at the beginning. But now that I've gotten enough experience with all of those things, I can pick and choose which things work best for me. And it seems seamless now, it took a while to get to, but, I'm feeling pretty good and pretty lucky to have so many different angles at my disposal.
Watching you sort of get ready to play yesterday, at least in the morning skate, and just sort of, from bird's eye view up in the press box, and not knowing who was going to start actually yesterday, not knowing at that point it was your turn. Just a lot of, small crease movements, even when you're not in the crease. And it looked like a lot of sort of just trying to, for lack of a better term on my end, not knowing what you were trying to do, looked like almost sort of set your stance, set your posture. How much has what you've done off the ice translated into what you're trying to feel and achieve on the ice? And is that a big part of your preparation, whether it's for a practice or a game?
Yeah, I mean, off the ice is kind of the activation portion and strengthening portion where you kind of have a chance to, I guess, just simplest terms, get certain muscle groups prepared and strong and easily accessible for when you go on the ice. And then on the ice, you feel out kind of the technical aspects. And if you on the best of days when you activate properly, those little feel out movements that you're referring to when you're kind of trying to feel out your stance and each movement pattern you want to be readily available when you go and try to perform it. And the better your activation is, the more seamless and immediate those muscles fire. And so yeah, when I'm on the ice preparing and whatnot, it's kind of feeling out all the different movement patterns that I'm going to see in a game, so that when each one is called upon, there's no hesitation.
Now, does that routine change at all from from game to game or practice to practice in terms of getting ready before, say, practice starts? Or do you just kind of feel it as you go? Because I kind of watched it from a distance, and a lot of start T pushes, shuffles, recovery, sort of a different pattern. When I watch other goalies, a lot of times on a game day, they've got a shot where it's all about shots, taking shots in a certain routine for shots. But yours seem to be a lot about, like you said, those movement patterns. Does it change, or is it the same? Have you got a nice little routine that you work on?
So my routine, I have a routine that I stick to, especially off the ice. I would say my routine is more consistently structured, and then on the ice, just because it's harder to have a consistent routine with our schedule. Each practice especially when you're on the road, you don't have as much time. You don't have any time before the skate to get out there early and do the routine that I would normally do at home. But when I'm on the ice, I have kind of a general outline of movement patterns that I want to get through and feel. And I keep it pretty open in terms of, if one movement pattern feels, good right away and it's firing, and then I'll just move on to another. And if one feels a little sticky and feels a little off, then I kind of I sit with it and kind of work through it, or I'll come back to it until it feels good. And obviously, you're never going to feel 100%. Not every single movement's going to feel, perfect every time. So if I come back to it enough times and it's not, then you just kind of play with what you're given. And in my opinion, and at least in my experience, when I'm preparing, I like to make sure I prepare all my movement patterns first. Because in my experience, you track the puck better when your body's firing to you subconsciously, and you don't have to think about your movements. And so if I'm moving well and I'm able to get into position without any hiccups, then the quick trigger, the quick reaction comes naturally, and the picture and my reads come much clearer.
That makes a ton of sense. One little one that I noticed in the corner was almost like a little square. You're just like circle would almost be. It's just 4 quick movements in like a diamond pattern off in the corner of the rink while everything else is going around. Is that just another example of one of those little movement patterns that you've worked into your routine? If I'm feeling good, it's a couple. If I'm not, I'll do a couple more.
Right. Yeah. No, that's just kind of like an efficient way of doing it. It's a similar rotation. That 45-degree rotation, whatever it would be in a box to create a box. You can kind of just go around in circles, and instead of going the length of the ice or whatever, being in a crease, being kind of limited to only going using the one half of the crease, but gives the other players an opportunity to use the net while I'm doing my thing that doesn't necessarily need shooters. So it's kind of just an efficient way to do it.
Love it. I'm going to let you go because I know you got lots on the go here. I did want to ask you real quick, like how tough is it this year when you're playing the same team over and over again? And I had to ask, there was a sequence on the power play last night where just Brock Besser skating downhill at you and he makes a cross ice pass to Elias Pettersson. And then I couldn't help but notice at the end of practice today, you and Connor almost working a 2-on-1 drill with a pass or shoot option that almost felt the same. Like, are you guys trying to look at situation-specific stuff and integrate it into your practices in such a unique season where you might see the same play every, one night to the next, especially on a power play?
Yeah, when we get a block of time, especially for me, I have more practice time, obviously, than Helly. So when I get in the net, and it's usually when I get beat on something or if I, make a save that I think could be a bit cleaner, and it's a situation that happens consistently enough, I usually myself and Flats try to create a drill that replicates it the best way possible, and we usually go as simple as possible, and then kind of add a bit more of a dynamic element to it as we perfect the simple version of it. And what you were watching was kind of a later progression. It didn't start out with a player moving and able to pass or shoot. It's kind of you just do the pass first, and just to get the movement down and whatnot. And so that was a movement pattern that I've been working on personally over the last couple weeks now. because I'm pretty sure one of my first 2 games, there was a play that I got, me and Helly got beat on because we kind of locked onto the shooter a little bit heavy, and then weren't able to get across on a back door. So I'm pretty sure that save that I made on that power play was the result of having worked on something very similar. So I'm pretty thankful that we put the work in to do that. And then, yeah, we were just kind of doing some maintenance stuff. Even though, it looks like that part of my game is feeling good. It's always good to touch on it, to maintain it.
Oh, that's fantastic stuff. I wasn't sure if I was reading too much into it, but when I watched that save, and it was a hell of a save, and then watched you guys working on it, I had to ask. Listen, there's so much more I could ask you about watching you and Helly practice and how much fun you have, but how much you guys also talk about things, watching you look. It's like you're looking at each other's balance and hands. There seems like a really incredible relationship there. If I could leave it off on that one, how much do you guys, how much of this is a partnership in terms of discussions about the position? I know how much passion you guys have for it, where you're really comparing notes out there.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's my favorite part about being on this team, is the relationship Helly and I have built. We discuss everything and anything and everything, and it's such a healthy relationship. We respect each other's games, but we play so different. But there's so many things that I can learn from him, and hope that he can learn from me. And there's a lot of things that he's perfected in his game that he does far different than I do, but better than I do. So we're always talking. I'm always asking him questions, and he respects my opinions enough to ask me questions and whatnot. And we've, I think, both become way better because of it.
All right, LB, well, I'll let you go. I wanted to just say thanks. It's fun to watch you every time you come into Vancouver. As a guy who's from Vancouver, I know a lot of my friends and family who are Canucks fans they get a little nervous every time you come into town because the results have been pretty stellar, but it sure was fun to watch in person last night. So thank you very much for the time.
No, thank you, Kevin.
For a guy who had the all-world junior career, he had to earn his stripes. He had to grind through it the first few years, and he's really found a significant home backing up a Vezina Trophy winner, and has a great relationship going there with the Winnipeg Jet coaching staff and Wade Flaherty. And there's something happening, but he works his way around the world. He just doesn't one little thing takes a piece from here, piece from there, all the way around, including to we have a double feature this week on our interviews with Adam Francilia, who has that relationship with Laurent Brossoit.
Yeah, and we just thought it would be perfect. We'd been sort of chit-chatting with Adam about getting him on the podcast. He's in San Jose, and like a lot of these guys, there's some downtime there into the evenings when you can't leave the hotel room. And so it just made perfect sense. LB's interview wasn't, we didn't give him the Kevin Woodley hour-and-a-half treatment. So we had a little extra time for this episode, and it made sense to have Adam on because he's been a big part of it. And when you heard LB talk about sort of that relationship with Connor and that back and forth, and that sort of, working together, feeding off each other, bouncing ideas, I know that's a big part of sort of the evolution of the relationship with his trainer, Adam Francilia. And so it was a chance to sort of ask him about some of those things, and also a chance to ask, how he's managing. Wait till you hear the 1 degree of Adam Francilia's story involving waiver claims and 4 different goaltenders that are all his clients, all basically tied to one transaction, and all with their futures up in the air, and all ending up requiring quarantines and time in hotel rooms and unique ways to train. So it just made sense to have Adam on now to talk about that, to talk about LB, and tie all these things together.
Adam Francilia with the San Jose Sharks, but a whole much more. It's the double feature on In Goal Radio, the podcast, the feature interview brought to you by Sensorina VR.
Welcome back to the program, Adam Francilia, goaltender, trainer extraordinaire. I don't know how we introduce you. Like, what's the title? Actually, what's the title with the San Jose Sharks? What's the official title with the San Jose Sharks? We should mention that. I always talk about all the different clients, the NHL guys that we talk to and see you work with, but what's the official title down there in San Jose?
Well, thanks, Kev. Great to be on the show. That's a great question. The Sharks refer to me as a goaltending consultant. I don't really know what I am, to be honest with you. I struggle with that, with putting a title on it. I think the closest thing that probably makes sense is a long-term development coach, because obviously what we do together, with my clients and I, it's pretty multifaceted, and obviously, there's the off ice that, has a lot of carryover in what we do, as to the actual on ice, technicalities of the game. And then there's the on ice aspect, but then there's a whole bunch of, holistic health and wellness and the mental emotional part. And boy, oh boy, if there was ever a season that the mental emotional part and having somebody there to, come alongside of you was important. It's sure this one.
Well, I guess like putting a label on it would be like when we say he's a butterfly goaltender or he's quote unquote athletic, right? Like goalies hate that. Mm-hmm. So why would we put a label on your work? That's perfect. Sure. Listen, we had one of your clients, Laurent Brossoit, on the show with you this week, not together, but obviously on the same segment. But I don't want to put you in a spot to sort of, ask about specific guys, because there's just some things we don't want to cross there in terms of, some of the specific work. So I wanted to ask you a more general question with all your clients, how you're managing that, how you're helping guys manage this season, the uniqueness of it, whether it's, I think you've got like 4 or 5 clients that have gone through quarantine. Some of them that have gone multiple times across the border. I think of Eric Comrie's had 2 2-week quarantines in in Canada, another one going to New Jersey. Grosnick, we've had him on the podcast, talking about the workouts he does in his hotel room. But these guys are in spots sometimes. And even when they go on road trips for 10 days, 14 days, like it's rink, hotel. The most they can do is a walk. Like there's not much they can do. They're stuck in hotel rooms for long periods of time. So can you give me some ideas? Because there might be some kids out there too that are, hey, I can't get to the gym. I can't do this. Like, how have you managed this with your clients, and any good examples of ways that you find to sort of, stay on top of what they need to physically and maybe emotionally and mentally amid such trying times?
Well, for sure. I'll start it with probably a bit of a funny story here that I think ties in 4 of my clients into the same story. And just to give you an idea of what players, and more specifically goaltenders, just because of the challenges with, waiving and roster spots and whatnot. And the goaltenders certainly are feeling that challenge, I think, more than any other position this year. I think we've seen that clearly. So, for example, one of my guys that I've been working with started this off season was Mike Smith. Mike Smith, as everybody remembers, had a little tweak that he was dealing with that just hampered him starting the beginning of the season. It wasn't a game related thing or any even hockey related. It was just a stretch related thing. So he goes down. And so I'm working with him, obviously in addition to the great Edmonton staff there, but I'm working with him to, try to help him accelerate his healing process, while at the same time, Troy Grosnick, who's another one of my guys, has to be put on waivers. He gets claimed by the Oilers. Now he has a couple day trip to drive up to Edmonton. So we're dealing with hotel workouts, but he gets told to stop, right? And a lot of people know that story. He gets told to stop before the border because there's a chance that the Oilers are going to make a claim on another one of my clients, Aaron Dell, from Toronto, because Toronto had to waive him. And so Deller is in a holding position where we have to, basically take what he's got in his hotel room, which is nothing, just him. We have to put a schedule together based on the potential amount of days that he might have to wait. All the while, my 4th client, Eric Comrie, who's in New Jersey, obviously is keeping paying attention to this, because knowing that there's a chance that New Jersey, who did in fact put a claim on Aaron Dell, and so now Combs is in a situation in New Jersey where now he can no longer be with the team. But has to be in his hotel room with no equipment. So I had the 4 guys that were involved in this narrative were all clients of mine, and I'm working simultaneously with each one of those guys. So, that was, boy, that's a first for
Well,
me,
there's been a
right?
lot. Well, there's been a lot of firsts in this, during these times of COVID and with the challenges of bubble. And so, how do you manage it? Like how much of it is also being in here for these guys, but how do you give me an example of how you manage the hotel workouts? Like how are guys managing to sort of these guys are like a guy like Eric. He comes out of that quarantine, he gets a shot in short order, and he hasn't had a lot of shots, and he did really well with it, but. You got to stay prepared for those moments. You can't just sit in the hotel and watch Netflix for 8 hours a day.
That's right. No. So, what I do is I have a whole series of goaltending specific workouts that I've created that require nothing but body weight. And they're very effective. A lot of people have a hard time sometimes, thinking that, non weight related or equipment related workouts are kind of a second rate workout. But if you really understand what you're doing and you're able to challenge the individual with complexity of exercise, of nervous system complexity, and you're able to put the workout together in a way that makes the most out of those exercises you're able to use, then they are very, very effective. And for guys to be able to just have, so they can go on, I use Dropbox. I have a file that I populate with just body weight workouts. And then sometimes, when we see guys like Dell, like Grosnick, like Comrie, who are with teams, again, Eric went back to the Jets again, and their teams are able to at times drop limited equipment off, but a piece of equipment, whether it's a Swiss ball or some adjustable dumbbells or whatever, that opens up a whole new world. So they can go into the Dropbox, and I have categorized workouts that basically can use as little or as much as they're able to get their hands on. And then from there, we're able to communicate, daily or every other day, and we're able to actually get a schedule and a timetable. And I think one of the big things for these guys who sort of get thrown into the, to the abyss of a hotel quarantine, to be able to have a time where they know that they're going to work out at this time, they know what they're going to do. It gives them the semblance of a schedule. And what that does for their mental emotional state is tremendous, especially when we tie that in with phone calls and even Zoom workouts, in quarantine, well, all the guys, but Coms and I, we jump on Zoom workouts, every little bit when our schedules work out, and we're able to just spend that time together, a few times here and there. And just that interaction is really, really helpful. And they sort of feel like they connected with the outside world. They got something in that was very, very productive and meaningful for their position specifically, and it's really helped guys get through.
I was going to say they're so regimented in their lives, right? Especially in season, right? Like it's practice at this time, game at this time, morning skate, dinner at this time, team meetings at this time. Like everything is sort of that day to day is outlined for them. So losing that for 8 days or 14 days, depending on which way you're quarantining, or in Com's case, he had a COVID, close contact quarantine too. Like that, I never thought about the sort of, mental emotional challenge of losing that and how important a workout could be. Do you see like some similarities there's probably some similarities to kids or, frankly, even Joe Public, guys like myself, like the challenges of this time, sort of finding that time, creating that schedule, and making it sort of, productive and position focused, how big that could be for everyone.
Well, I think too, one thing that I, for fun, because I'm in a hotel room too, so I'm experiencing it. I'm in San Jose right now. I came down here. I had to do a 7-day quarantine, so I'm in my hotel room now. I drove, which was nice because I was able to bring a little bit of a mini gym with me, but at the same time, I did challenge myself one day to see if I could, put my version of a slide board, a goalie slide board workout together without a slide board. And as you know, I thought after I'd finished the actual workout, I actually thought, you know what, I'm going to put a couple little clips together just for fun. and just send them to a couple of close friends. And of course, you and Hutch were a couple of those guys. And you know what? I did it because I wanted to show my guys that, number one, you don't need anything other than a bit of creativity and imagination. And then for me, obviously, it was a set of booties and a couple knee pads, but anything that anybody could put in a backpack or whatever the case may be. And so, number one, I wanted to show them that the old guy was still doing it in the hotel room and not taking days off. But I also wanted to show them what was possible. And so, I sent that to you, and you know what, Kev, feel free to, if you want, on the understanding that anybody looking at it realized it wasn't made for production value. But I think if it can help, if you can even post something like that, I mean, it's good for a laugh. But I also think for, we look at some of these major junior kids that are potentially going back, and they're going to be in these hotel rooms, or even, who knows what they're going to be staying in, and for, especially for a goaltender, because to simulate those movement patterns and to stimulate the musculature that really needs to constantly at this time, be activated, to show them that, hey, there is something you can actually do in a very limited space and with a little bit of creativity. So, you can go ahead if you want and post that video. And I mean, if it can help give some people ideas, especially some of our young goaltenders or some of our not so young goaltenders, then, there could be some value in it for the members.
You mentioned Mike Smith. Another new client this summer was, probably before the summer, but Matt Murray, who's now in Ottawa. And again, without getting into the specifics of each guy, I wondered, because obviously you're trying to get them to a certain place in terms of range of movement and ability to move and sort of patterns of movement in terms of how you trigger movement and reaction time and things like that. But they all come from such unique backgrounds, both technically in terms of how they've thought of movement in the past and how they've tried to move as goaltenders in the past, and also physical limitations. Like I don't know what Mike Smith's are, but he's an older goalie versus some of the younger guys. What can you, without giving specifics on either guy, because again, there's enough clients here that just talk in general terms and we won't give specifics, but the idea of a transformation, like, I know you want to get them to a certain point, but how do you find that starting point and get them, like, how does that take shape uniquely, and I'm guessing uniquely, within each one?
Sure, for sure. I think when I watch a goaltender play, I mean, obviously I watch so many goaltenders play that sometimes when they become clients, I sort of already have a book on them in my mind. And then when I do start assessing, clips and everything, I do look at sort of, I've said it before, kind of beneath the gear to see what's going on physiologically. And when I start working with somebody that's whether it's brand new, like a Mike Smith this year, or a Matt Murray, or even just, guys that I've had for years, like a Laurent Brossoit or Connor Hellebuck or Devin Dubnyk or any of those guys, James Reimer, whatever, there's always transformation that goes on, because number one, no matter how long someone's been in the game, it's not only so for me, it's not only the ability to make them physically capable of continuing to play the position, it's also making them relevant to goaltending as we find it today. And so there's that's sort of a multi-layered thing. We want to be able to, obviously goaltending, it's basically a chess match, right? It's a chess match between the guys who want to put the puck in the net versus the guys who want to keep the puck out of the net. And just when one of those opponents thinks they have something new, the other guy's job is to figure out how they can, counteract that and find something that offsets it. So, again, without getting specific to maybe, one particular, goaltender and too many details, the whole thing that I look for is, where are the imbalances in someone's game? So, for example, some of these examples could be useful. Goaltenders, obviously, seemingly they have to be, quite mobile and flexible guys, but there's guys that have actually joint limitations that their bodies have done a great job of modifying their movement patterns, creating some cheats that have worked very, very well. But at the same time, it creates an imbalance. Anything that your body can't do and your brain has to create a modification for, it does take away from a balanced approach. And of course, no goalie should or be expected to. We're not creating cookie cutters or robots. I mean, that's the worst thing we can do. So, if you look at a guy like Mike Smith, there were some things we wanted to do to create more balance in the game, but you can't take the Smitty out of the game. I mean, that's one of the things that's made him number one successful and given him the longevity, that he has. So you have some goaltenders also on the other end of the spectrum that actually have quite a lot of joint hypermobility. And on the surface, that sounds like it should be really, really good because, that gives a goalie, maybe more range or more flexibility. But we were talking at some point previously, and I gave the example of a goalie that has joint hypermobility. There are some challenges that come along with that, and I'll use an illustration that I think I shared with you. Somebody that has normal joint mobility, normal joint function, normal joint range. It's like if you were to take a drinking straw, put it straight up in the palm of your hand, and try to balance a paper plate on top of it. When your hand reacts to try to create balance, through the straw and the paper plate, that reaction is instantaneous to that plate. So the message you send gives an instantaneous reaction to the result you're trying to produce. Now, someone with joint hypermobility, it's sort of similar to, the drinking straws that bend, right? The bendy straw. So it would be similar to putting that in your hand and having a paper plate on top but having the challenge of that extra movement. So your reaction in your hand doesn't instantaneously translate to the effect on the plate to balance. So in essence, it's almost like the springs aren't loaded tight enough to get the response that you're hoping for when your brain decides to elicit that response. So sometimes there's a delay. There's a delay that can seem to make somebody slow, which it isn't slow. The message was actually sent at the exact same time as anybody else, but the manifestation of that movement or reaction seems to have been delayed somewhat because of the kind of the superfluous, that extra movement through the joint. So when you have somebody like that, and I think it's important, especially for young goaltenders, to identify, if there is a little bit of joint hypermobility, looking to, understand, kind of what I've just explained, and, maybe, whether it's looking for help with, somebody that can understand that, or just being conscious of it. But, there's things you have to do for an athlete, for a goaltender like that actually would seem to be, contraindicated for another goalie. Like if, I do have a couple goalies that are hypermobile, and, one of the things that we greatly had to modify and cut out in some cases was, certain types of stretching. Because
so you had to tell these guys not to stretch as much.
Not to stretch as much, or in the traditional way that we think of stretching, because now you're just going to continue to destabilize this thing that is slightly less stable than we want at the outset. So of course there's, and now, whether it's things like, I think, like Aldoa, which is obviously something that, LB, has really embraced and I use with all of my guys. It's such a great modality. So whether it's Aldoa or whether it's, different trigger points or there's a whole slew of things, there's a lot of ways to allow a hypermobile goaltender to maintain joint health, to maintain tissue health, to help in restoration and recovery, but at the same time not, further destabilizing an already slightly unstable frame. So that's just one thing where you were talking about, because there are fundamental constants that we want to try to achieve with goaltenders that seem to remain true across the board, but there is a large degree of individuality that we have to understand as well.
All right, last one. We'll tie it back to LB because you mentioned Aldoa, and that was something he talked about with our interview with him. But, guys that are new, Matt, Mike, then you got guys, like you said, like LB that have been around, Brossoit, who's been with you for so long. when I talked to him, he seemed to just have this, he really knew his foundation. And as much as you guys are communicating all the time and there is a constant evolution, what's it like how rewarding is it to see a guy who just reaches a level where he understands his game on the ice for sure, but also seems to have a real intimate understanding of the physiology behind it and how he gets to that point. Like he said, like he goes out for a game, everybody else wants shots. Like he's all about sort of movement and his stance and his setup, and the tracking and the shots will all flow from that in his mind. It was really interesting to hear that, and must be somewhat rewarding for you to have a guy that sort of comes to that type of awareness.
Oh, it's incredibly, rewarding, and it's also, tremendous amount of, how proud you are of somebody, when you started to work with somebody. And, Laurent really started to understand really early on that, to become a student of oneself and to try to really get to understand your own self. And I think, one of where we find him now, and, and our dialogue, because he is such has become an expert on himself, the dialogue is incredibly rewarding because his level of sophistication of understanding who he is, and I'll tell you, one thing that I've really appreciated with, players and goaltenders that have been able to reach this level and stay there and continue to get better is the only way that you can learn about yourself is to be incredibly self-honest. And that's something I think that I would like to, challenge a lot of our young guys that are up and coming. I think to have an honest critique of oneself is the only way you're going to really learn about yourself. To not make excuses, to be somebody that can critically think about oneself is important. And one of the things that LB's done so incredibly well is to be able to be very self-honest, because that's the only way that you can understand what challenges you may have, what areas that you need to improve in, and not not be defensive about it. So he's done a tremendous job of that. And for us to be able to dialogue at a high level, because he's able to think and dialogue at a high level, the ideas, the questions, just running things past each other, and it's a two-way conversation. It's really, really great, and that's why he's continued to improve and improve and improve. But I love the ownership that he has of his game, and quite honestly, without getting too deep into it, I mean, into his life, he's becoming he's such an interesting guy. He has such a depth to his character, and now you're starting to see that translate over into the maturity that's coming into his game. So yeah, of course, it's incredibly, it's incredibly rewarding to have a relationship with somebody like that, where you just see them, just grow. And
well, it's been,
yeah,
I was just going to say it's been it was funny to watch him, or fun to watch him, because as you're talking about the conversations, one of the things he talked about in the interview was his favorite part of the Jets is him and Helly having what, from the 400 level, media area that I'm from, as I'm watching them, like they and Flats would be in on it. Wade Flaherty, the goalie coach, like group discussions, and you can see them sort of mimicking things with their hands and hand position and body movement as they all sit around in a circle and just talk goaltending. At times, like there was one, they had to be 10 minutes out there just talking about it. So obviously the similar type of conversations, that's awesome to hear. Another one of your clients as well. And they all seem to be getting on the same page and understanding each other and their own game. So, hey, friend, I know you got to run, but thank you so much for the time this morning. We'll take you up on that offer, I think, to post a video and get some comments from you on it. So people look for that at InGoal Premium in the next little bit. This has been awesome. Perfect compliment to having LB on. We appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having me on, Kev. It's always a pleasure. Nice to talk to you.
In a couple of years, maybe we'll have to do it sooner than that. We'll have to come up with the top 3 drills or stretching routines or whatever that came out of the COVID pause and being quarantined. Because there's got to be some that came out of it beyond just doing your regular stretch, moving the furniture around and such. Or doing the slide board in the bathroom is a perfect example.
Yeah, no, there's probably going to be a whole bunch. And as Adam said, and we've seen this, hey, Maria Mountain's done this as well and talked about this. Like, she shares exercises on her channels and her social media. Like, hey, you don't need a $25,000 gym to do mobility drills, to do exercises, to sort of stay in goalie shape. And so nice to sort of hear that translates all the way up to the National Hockey League and how these guys are managing that. And there's lessons there, I think, for young kids that, if you're lamenting, hey, I can't get to my gym, I can't do this, and just woe is me and sitting at home worried about it, like, that's probably not the right attitude. There's a way to we talk about finding ways to get better when your usual ways aren't available to you. And I think the off-ice work you can do that Adam talks about, that we've seen Maria talk about, is exhibit A of that.
Is he talking to you or me when he's talking about woe is me? Hutch?
I don't know. There's a lot of
you and I got a lot of woes. Like,
so
we should be guiding horses right now in a wagon.
Listen, let's be honest. Talk about myself.
But you know what? Like, I love seeing that, though, because we were actually on a team meeting last night, and we're hearing from parents whose kids have come home. Well, you need to get me a gym membership. Well, no, you just need to have a little bit of creativity. And we also know from Afran, and we know from Maria, that there's far more to off-ice goaltending training than going to the gym and getting jacked by lifting big weights. In fact, it's quite counterproductive to do that. So love to see that. I want to know from you guys
in the next couple of weeks, who is the best, or give you maybe your top three going east-west in the National Hockey League, because we've talked so much about that. So where is that trend, and who do you guys see as players that really excel in that regard?
Ooh, that's on the...
Oh, no, I was going to say next week. I paused there, sorry, because I thought Woody wanted to jump in, so I apologize.
Okay, that's good. I admit, never. I don't mean jump in.
Never.
Come on. I'm glad you gave us a week.
I was just going to say it's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting, because define what that means. Does it mean I can go 100 miles really fast, or does it mean I play a style, hey, Mr. Mike Smith, where you only have to take 2 steps to cross the ice because you're standing on the goal line?
Yeah.
Well, look at the names.
Bit.
Look at LB. Look at how efficiently and in one piece LB moves around the ice. Do we think of that as explosive and dynamic? No, but damn, is it effective? And it's controlled and it's efficient. Cal Peterson skating on the skates, right? Like, I'm just looking at guys that lead the league right now, and kind of going back to that Dryden article. Like, Cal Peterson's all about everything on the skates and his patience on his edges. Amongst the top goalies in the league.
Make a Superman save last year, and then this past week make a 2-pad stack. So going with both ends and somehow making it work, which is different.
Exactly.
Most entertaining east-west.
Yes, exactly. We'll have to have a subcategory. Thanks to everybody at Sense Arena VR, and of course the Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, source for sports Surrey. Reach out to them for all of your goaltending needs, and I'll be on the site at the same time as you. I guarantee it. As I peruse what Cam and the people have going on over at Hockey Shop, thehockeyshop.com, and source for sports Surrey. Thanks to Adam Francilia. Thanks to, of course, Cam Matwiv, and thanks to Laurent Brossoit for hanging out with us on In Goal Radio, the podcast.